Hello everybody and welcome back to another Not Applicable Formula 1 video. I hope that you're well. And a bit of breaking news on the Not Applicable Formula 1 channel because Fernando Alonso, the man, the myth, the legend of Formula 1, has signed a contract with Alpine for 2022. He will be with the team for another year, meaning that we will still have Ocon and Alonso together. And this got me thinking, this video is going to be a little bit out there, because it got me thinking about Formula 1 and drivers and the age that they retire at. So everybody at the moment in time is talking about Kimi Räikkönen, whether this is going to be his final season in Formula 1. You know, his form's dipped off a little bit. But I personally think that Kimi Räikkönen, if he wanted to, could go for quite a few more years. And I wanted to sort of delve into how this could affect Formula 1 moving into the future. Like, I am not saying that Fernando Alonso doesn't deserve his seat. He is a 2005, 2006 world champion. He has been incredibly good in Formula 1, continually outperformed every single teammate that he has. I mean, even looking at the Drivers' Championship at this moment in time, we've got to remember, Alonso had 2 years off of Formula 1. He's come back in, he's outperforming the likes of Vettel, Stroll, Tsunoda, and he's 1 point off of Ocon. And realistically, he should be ahead of Ocon. Ocon got 25 points from Hungary, which was just a little bit insane. You know, it's not something that's going to happen every single season. But Fernando Alonso did turn 40 recently, and we've got to be thinking about Fernando Alonso as a man who tested in Formula 1 in 1999. He started racing in Formula 1 in 2001. He's been part of the sort of overall look of Formula 1 for 20 years. And it just got me thinking, is he worthy of that seat? Most definitely so. He's been incredibly quick this season, and I think personally he looks better this year than he did 2, 3, 4 years ago when he sort of took that gap from Formula 1 for a couple of years. And I know that back in the 1950s and 60s, we had drivers that were 50 plus years old, but let's be honest, back then it was less demanding of a sport and much less competitive in terms of what was expected from a Formula 1 driver. And yes, we've got the likes of Schumacher, obviously had his last race at 43 in 2012. But my real concern and my problem with Alpine sticking with Alonso for 2022 is I am really concerned about the future of Formula 1 in terms of younger drivers entering the sport and being able to actually get themselves a seat for the long term and show whether they are good or bad enough for Formula 1. Like, think about it. In the last 20 years, the technology and understanding of our health and, you know, the regimes that Formula 1 drivers now have has just gone insane. In comparison to what they were doing 20 years ago, Formula 1 drivers are the absolute pinnacle of athletes now. They are the fittest human beings alive. And it's one of those things that I think personally, Fernando Alonso could go for another 5, 6, 7 years. But then, are we missing out on other drivers coming into the sport? Like, Alonso looks better now than he did previously. And there's twofold to this argument. The first thing is that there's more series leading into Formula 1 now. You know, we've got F2, F3, we've got Formula E, and we've got the W series as well. All of these series, you would say, sort of lead a path to Formula 1. You'd expect that the winners of these series would eventually find their seat, find their way into Formula 1. And with Formula 1 becoming more accessible to more drivers, you know, there are more drivers coming through now. It is not just a rich man's sport. Some drivers are able to find their way through these formulas, and more drivers are becoming of the level that you'd expect them to get a Formula 1 seat in the future, but there's less seats available, you know. Fernando Alonso has effectively taken a seat, one of 20 seats in Formula 1 for 20 years. And we've got the likes of Vettel, Hamilton, these guys that are staying around and could stick around for the foreseeable future. I can't see Alonso, Hamilton, Vettel, these drivers that have been around, leaving the sport anytime soon. I know that lots of people speculate about Hamilton leaving. I personally think Hamilton, again, similar to Alonso, is going to be in the sport into his 40s. And with more and more drivers into their 40s coming into the sport, it means that more and more drivers that are younger are missing out on seats. Like, let's talk about the Alpine Academy for a second. Because Fernando Alonso is having this incredible season, and because he's just signed a new contract with Alpine, if you're an Alpine driver that's in Formula 2, you're looking at this thinking, that's another year that I have to wait if I'm going to be part of this academy still. That's another year where there's one less seat for me available in Formula 1. Am I going to be able to get there? Am I going to be good enough? And the real person that came to mind when I was thinking about making this really impromptu video was De Vries. He signed for McLaren in 2010. And, you know, he could have come into the team at any point from then onwards. He's been a good, consistent driver throughout. You know, took a step back. He won F2 in 2019, and he's just won the Formula E Championship. But I haven't really seen anybody talking about him getting into Formula 1. Like, he's won 2 of the series that lead into Formula 1, that lead towards you being capable of driving a Formula 1 car. He's won both of those series. And yet, Fernando Alonso is going to easily keep this seat at Alpine. You know, at no point were Alpine like, ooh, De Vries has just won a championship. Maybe we should bring him in. Absolutely not. Go for Alonso, tried and tested, been there for 20 years, and is just an absolute stalwart of the sport. You know, we're looking at drivers like Albon. Albon always gets caught up in these conversations. Will he ever be able to find his way back into Formula 1? And I personally don't think he will be able to, not because of his ability, but because of the longevity of other drivers on the grid, the longevity of drivers continuing to keep themselves at the level of Formula 1 and not dropping off. You know, we used to see drivers drop off around about 35, 36. I'm thinking of Mark Webber, Jenson Button. They both retired at 37, and they were very much at the end of their career. We're seeing more and more drivers that I think will drive into their 40s, into their 50s in Formula 1. And with more drivers coming through, with more series leading on, F2, FE, F3, Women's Series, we're going to see even more drivers miss out on a potential seat in Formula 1. Are we going to miss out on some amazing drivers and possibly some amazing stories that could happen in Formula 1 just purely because there aren't enough seats? Now, the second fold of that is that we need more teams in Formula 1. And yes, the budget cap is coming in. Let's say we get 2 more teams in. There's been a lot of speculation around Porsche and Audi and possibly other teams coming in from the VW group as well. Is that enough? If we get 2 more teams in, 4 more seats available, will that allow more drivers to come through? Yes. Is it enough for Formula 1 to sustain in the long run? Because my problem is, if we get all of these drivers, Alonso drives until he's 45, Vettel drives until he's 45, Hamilton drives until he's 45, how many years, how many drivers are we going to miss on the way? Because we've never really seen De Vries push into a Formula 1 seat and given a proper chance. You could argue a similar sort of thing with Stoffel Van Dorn. You know, he ended up in that McLaren seat, but it was a terrible McLaren car, and he never really got an opportunity in Formula 1 since. Lots of drivers are going to miss out. And I think, yes, I'm happy that Fernando Alonso is staying. I think he's been well worthy of that seat. But I'd love to throw the question to you. Do you think drivers staying for longer in their career, drivers getting older but staying in Formula 1 is good for the sport? Or could we see a lot of drivers miss out because of this? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you are new. I will see you next time.